ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरोन् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगना ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। नमो ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामीति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादेशतारिणे। नमो ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिसिद्धान्त सरस्वतीति नामिने। श्रीवर्षभानवि देवी दायिताय कृपाब्धये कृष्णसम्बन्धविज्ञान दायिने प्रभवे नमः। माधुर्योज्ज्वलप्रेमाद्य श्रीरूपानुगभक्तिदा श्रीगौरकरुणाशक्ति विग्रहाय नमोऽस्तुते। नमस्ते गौरवाणी श्रीमूर्तये दीनतारिणे रूपानुगविरुधाप अपसिद्धान्त्वध्वान्तकारिणे। नमो गौरकिशोराय साक्षाद्वैराग्यमूर्तये विप्रलम्बारसाम्बोधे पादाम्बुजाय ते नमः। नमो भक्तिविनोदाय सच्चिदानन्दनामिने गौरशक्तिस्वरूपाय रूपानुगवराय ते। गौराविर्भावभूमेष्वं निर्देष्टा सज्जनप्रियः वैष्णव सर्वभौमा श्रीजगन्नाथाय ते नमः। श्री रूप श्री सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल भट्ट दास रघुनाथ ऐशाय गोसाय कोरि चरण वंदन यहाँ होते विघ्ननाश अभीष्ट पुराण। संकर्षणकारणतोयशायी गर्भोदशायी च पयोक्तिशायी शेषशयस्यां सकलासा नित्यानन्दक्य राम शरणं ममस्तु। मत्समो नास्ति पापात्मा नापराधी च कश्चन परिहारे अपि लज्जा मे किं ब्रूवे पुरुषोत्तमा। युवतीनं यथा योनि यूनं च युवतौ यथा मनो अभिरमते तद्वान् मनो मे रमतां त्वयि। भूमौ स्खलितपादानां भूमिरेवावलम्बनं त्वयि चातापराधानां त्वमेव शरणं प्रभु। गोविन्द वल्लभे राधे प्रार्थये त्वामहं सदा त्वदीयमिति जानातौ गोविन्दो मां त्वया सह। राधे वृन्दावनाधीशे करुणामृतवाहिनी कृपया निज पादाब्ज दास्यं मह्यं प्रदीयताम्। वृन्दायै तुलसीदेव्यायै प्रियायै केशवस्य च विष्णुभक्तिप्रदे देवी सत्यवत्यै नमो नमः। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। So we'll sing a small song, Jai Radha Madhava. Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Vihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Vihari, Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha, Jaya Girivaradhari, Jaya Girivaradhari, Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha, Jaya Girivaradhari, Jaya Girivaradhari, Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana, Shodanandana Vraja Janaranjana, Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana, Shodanandana Vraja Janaranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Vihari, Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Vihari, Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha, Jaya Girivaradhari, Jaya Girivaradhari, Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha, Jaya Girivaradhari, Jaya Girivaradhari, Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana, Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय राधा मदन मोहन राधे Jaya Radha Madan Mohan Radha Madan Mohan Radhe. Jaya Mahaprabhu Jaya Mahaprabhu Jaya Mahaprabhu Jaya Mahaprabhu. Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Narahari. Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Narahari. Nittai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nittai Gaura Hari Bol. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev Gurudev Gurudev. Jaya Jaya Gurudev. So we welcome you all for the Saturday program at ISKCON of Silicon Valley. So today we'll be seeing a summary of the 28th chapter of 3rd canto, where Kapila's instructions on the execution of devotional service. So there is no particular reason why we chose this chapter, but there are some Bhakti Vaibhava courses that happen at ISV. So as part of that, this is one of the chapters that we are supposed to prepare. So we just thought that we'll give a summary of that. And we thank Srivas Prabhu for inspiring us to read Bhagavatam every day. So before we start the class, would you mind introducing yourself, Prabhu?
I'm Vishnu Charan Das. I'm visiting from Tennessee, Nashville.
Okay.
This is my son, Freeman.
Haribol, nice to have you here. Are you staying here? For how long are you planning to stay here?
Leaving tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. I'm really sorry you're stuck with my class today, but let's have a good discussion on this. Usually Vaisheshika Prabhu gives the class, but he's busy with his book he's writing on. So he'll be here tomorrow evening, he'll give the lecture. So what we'll do is we'll just see the overall summary of the chapter, and then we'll go into each verse and go a little deeper into the purports. So Prabhuji, can we also, the 38th chapter, just the translations, can we project? 328. So we'll read the Sanskrit and the translation for verse number 1, 328:1. It's here. Can you make it a little bigger so I can see? Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Yogasya Lakshanam Vakshe Sabijasya Nrupatmaje Mano yenaiva vidhina prasannam dhyati satpatham yogas Shri Bhagavan Uvacha yogasya lakshanam vakshe sabijasya nrupatmaje Mano yenaiva vidhina prasannam yati satpatham Shri Bhagavan Uvacha yogasya lakshanam vakshe sabijasya nrupatmaje Mano yenaiva vidhina prasannam yati satpadam. You can lead. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha yogasya lakshanam vakshe
sabijasya nrupatmaje
bijasya
mano yenaiva vidhina prasannam yati satpatham.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Yogasya Lakshanam Vakshe Sabijasya Nrupatmaje Mano yenaiva vidhina Prasannam yati satpatham.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Yogesya Lakshanam Vakshe Sabijasya
Nrupatmaje
Mano yenaiva vidhina Prasannam
yati satpatham. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha The personality of Godhead said, Yogasya of the yoga system, Lakshanam description, Vakshe I shall explain, Sabijasya authorized, Nrupa Atmaje O daughter of the king, Manaha the mind, Ena by which, Eva certainly, Vidina by practice, Prasannam joyful, Yati attains, Satpatham the path of absolute truth. Let's go to the translation. The personality of Godhead said, My dear mother, O daughter of the king, now I shall explain to you the system of yoga, the object of which is to concentrate the mind. By practicing this system, one can become joyful and progressively advance the path of the absolute truth, advance towards the path of the absolute truth. Purport. The yoga process explained by Lord Kapiladev in this chapter is authorized and standard, and therefore these instructions should be followed very carefully. To begin, the Lord says that by yoga one can make progress towards understanding the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the previous chapter, it has been clearly stated that the desired result of yoga is not to achieve some wonderful mystic power. One should not be at all attracted by such mystic power, but should attain progressive realization on the path of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, which states in the last verse of the 6th chapter that the greatest yogi is he who constantly thinks of Krishna within himself, or he who is Krishna conscious. It is stated here that by following the system of yoga, one can become joyful. Lord Kapila, the personality of Godhead, who is the highest authority on yoga, here explains the yoga system known as Ashtanga Yoga, which comprises 8 different practices, namely Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. By all these stages of practice, one must realize Lord Vishnu, who is the target of all yoga. There are so-called yoga practices in which one concentrates the mind on voidness or on the impersonal, but this is not approved by the authorized yoga system as explained by Kapiladeva. Even Patanjali explains that the target of all yoga is Vishnu. Ashtanga Yoga is therefore part of Vaishnava practice because its ultimate goal is realization of Vishnu. The achievement of success in yoga is not acquisition of mystic power, which is condemned in the previous chapter, but rather freedom from all material designations and situation in one's constitutional position. This is the ultimate achievement of the yoga practice. So here Prabhupada clearly explains the first verse sets the stage for the entire chapter, where Kapiladeva is going to explain what is yoga and how one should take it, and then once one controls the mind, what is the object on which he should meditate and how we should meditate. So these are the very high level points that is going to be discussed in this chapter. And as he said in the first chapter, in this first verse, it is joyfully performed and it is for the progress of realizing the absolute truth. But when we see here in our day-to-day activities, when we do any practice, we never relate our practices to the ultimate goal of realizing the absolute truth. And then in Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna, it's not condemned, but if we want to really achieve the ultimate success, then we have to realize that the purpose of yoga is to understand the absolute truth. And Prabhupada here explains how one should not do yoga for attaining the mystic powers. Because in this world we see many yogis, and sometimes yoga people relate only to the bodily performances. They don't even touch the mind. But even if they touch the mind, they think that it's focusing the mind on something, which could be anything material also. But here Prabhupada clearly tells that the purpose of yoga is to understand the absolute truth. And he also says that the Ashtanga Yoga, the practice of the rules and regulations and the breathing exercises and everything, as even the Patanjali says, that ultimate result is to understand, realize Vishnu and serve him. And how it is will be explained in the following verses. Let's see the translation of this verse, second verse. This is verse 2. Okay. One should execute his prescribed duties to the best of his ability and avoid performing duties not allotted to him. One should be satisfied with as much gain as he achieves by the grace of the Lord. One should worship the lotus feet of the spiritual master. If we go a little bit to the verse on the top. Okay, so here if you see the verse, Swadharma Acharanam means executing one's prescribed duties. So what is our prescribed duty? How do we know what is our prescribed duty? How did Krishna establish the Swadharma for everybody? Because when we go into a corporate world, they have set up an organizational structure where people, according to their intellectual level, can do the duties, but the goal is to bring money, more profit for the company. So like that, the material world is created, but the whole goal is to realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In order to realize that, not all people have to follow or not at the same level of intelligence or their ability to perform certain activities. So what did Krishna do when he created this material world? He created this varnashrama dharma, right? He divided the society into 4 varnas and 4 ashramas. So according to one's nature, one can act and perform his day-to-day activities, because there are conditional duties and there are also constitutional duties. So we have to do both the things parallelly in order to attain the success. So that's what he's saying. The Swadharma Acharana means executing one's prescribed duties according to the 4 divisions of Varna and Ashrama, which is the 4 Varnas are Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. So whatever category we fall in, according to our one's ability, we have to execute our duties according to that. But then what is he saying is, in the translation he uses one word, because he says that Atmavit means a self-realized soul. While we are doing this, there is an important aspect Prabhupada explains here, which says that one should go to a self-realized person and learn from him. Because who is a self-realized person? Then Prabhupada explains that unless he knows who is the super soul and the soul, the super soul and the relationship between them, then he cannot be considered as Atmavit. So he says that one has to go and serve such a great soul. So he's in the you say Atmavit, of the self-realized soul, Charana, the feet, Archanam, worshipping. So he says that one should execute his prescribed duties to the best of his ability and avoid performing duties not allotted to him, because sometimes we feel like doing some activities which are very unnatural for us, because if that activity gives more sense gratification, we tend to perform that. But on the other hand, we should understand our own nature and act accordingly, and we should not try to be something which we are not. And then Prabhupada says one should be satisfied with as much gain as he achieves by the grace of the Lord. This is very important, because we always tend to collect more and be the best in the amount of wealth that we have. But here Prabhupada says that one should be satisfied, because the perfection of the purification of the mind is that it should be satisfied with whatever it has. So one should be satisfied with as much gain as he achieves by the grace of the Lord. And the first point, he says that these are all material things, that we have to do our duties and then we have to be satisfied with what we get, because what we get is what is according to what we did in the past. But there is one thing that we should start with. One should worship the lotus feet of the spiritual master. So that is the main first point that Lord Kapila is introducing here. So let's go to the next verse. Here it says that one should cease performing conventional religious practices and should be attracted to those which lead to salvation. One should eat very frugally and should always remain secluded so that he can achieve the highest perfection of life. So, let's explain more on the first point that Prabhupada says here. He says that one should cease performing conventional religious practices and should be attracted to those which lead to salvation. So mostly in India, we see that this conventional religious practices, right, is performed very often, because sometimes we ask them, sometimes even the purohits don't know. I went to a temple and then I was so curious on the meaning of the mantra that the purohit was chanting, and I asked him what is it, and he said he doesn't know. And that doesn't look nice, because people come and they pay, they give lots of money, they do some archana, and they think that just by doing that, the economic development is the goal of doing that. But if we see, there are not many temples in the Western world, there are not many scriptures which explain how to do all these Vedic rituals and rites, but still they are much more economically developed than India, for example. So, which proves that it's not necessary that one should perform religious practices to gain economic development, because it happens. Material things happen because it's ordained by the Lord, and it just happens according to our karma, or collective karma, whatever it is. But the purpose of religious practices and the sadhana that we do should be to attain Krishna. But Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita that the distressed, the desirer of wealth, and the inquisitive, and everybody goes to Krishna. So, but there is a difference, because when we do these religious practices to Vishnu, to satisfy him, even the desire, if it is to gain some economic development or some remuneration, Krishna satisfies that. But as a father, he knows what is best for us. So he frustrates us so that we don't come and ask again. So he gives the best in the end. But if we go to any other devata, for paradevata, for just for anything, the result may be quick, because somebody is like, for example, Lord Shiva can be pleased very easily. But the result is also temporary, and because our mind is not purified, and the tendency is to always get all the material things, the name, the fame, the wealth, and everything else, there is no guarantee that we would even realize the miseries of the material world, because the more opulence we get by praying, by doing our religious practices, the more we enter into the whirlpool of performing more and more religious practices to gain some material remuneration. So that is why Krishna says that even though you have some material desires, come to me to satisfy them, because ultimately Krishna is our well-wisher and he will purify us. And then there are some practices that is explained how Prabhupada says that Mita Meda Yadanam, it's there in the verse, which says that one should eat very frugally, which is very difficult, and I am on my way to practice it. Like it's so very difficult. Why Prabhupada says that is because the mind can be focused on the performance of sadhana. So I'll read this one sentence that Prabhupada explains in the purport. If one is so hungry that he could not devour 1 pound of foodstuffs, then instead of eating 1 pound, he should consume only half a pound and supplement this with 4 ounces of water. 1/4 of the stomach should be left empty for passage of air in the stomach. If one eats in this manner, he will avoid indigestion and disease. So, the solution for all the problems is there in the scriptures. And Prabhupada is giving this. So that's the first point, first principle. Before even explaining what one should do, Kapila is setting the standard that one should not do whatever I'm saying for the purpose of economic development. So the first thing he says is Vacho Vegam. As Rupa Goswami says, he also says here that means one should control the tongue, which talks and which eats. Let's go to the next verse, which says that one should practice non-violence and truthfulness, should avoid thieving, and be satisfied with possessing as much as he needs for his maintenance. He should abstain from sex life, perform austerity, be clean, and study the Vedas and worship the supreme form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, it's a very nice verse, and so many concepts are being explained here. Now let's see what is a thief. How do we explain a thief? Can you just tell me who is a thief?
Somebody who takes somebody else's property.
Somebody acquires somebody else's property, right?
Yeah.
But that's why our Shastras go one step forward. That's our common understanding. Here, Prabhupada, what he means by thief is one who accumulates more than he needs is a thief. Because sometimes in his lecture, Prabhupada gives this example because sometimes people want lots of land, lots of so many things. But he gives this example of a land. Like people fight like anything for land, right? And they get it. Like for example, out of bodily designation, we say that this is America, this is India, this is Pakistan, like that. But India, America and Pakistan has been there for millions and millions of years. And it doesn't, and then you come here for 60 years and then you go away. Before it was there. Before you, it was there. After you, it was there. But in those 60 years, you think it's yours. I'm an American because the land is where I was born. But then Prabhupada condemns that misconception, saying that actually the proprietor is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And because we don't know that, and then we think it's ours, and then we do so many things, nationalism, so many things based on that. And then we, as Prabhupada says, like we fight like animals sometimes based on so many lands, even within family and even within the loved ones, we fight. Because there is a tendency to acquire more than what we are entitled to, because the understanding is not right, because the Supreme Master is Krishna, and then everything belongs to him. So we should refrain from this thought, because then there is the concept of spiritual communism, because if we understand that everything belongs to Krishna and we have to satisfy Krishna, we are not the proprietors, we are not the enjoyers, Krishna is the only proprietor, Krishna is the only enjoyer, then we will give everything to Krishna because it belongs to him and nothing belongs to us. And Prabhupada says that is spiritual communism, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu proved it, because now we see that within our ISKCON, like we see all the people come together and they chant Hare Krishna to please Krishna. So this is a proof that Prabhupada established that one can get rid of all these misconceptions. And there are also, we get to see souls who don't accumulate more than, because we don't see that elsewhere in the material world, because they don't have that understanding. So the more and more people from material life come into Krishna consciousness, then that is a solution where we get the spiritual communism, which people, everybody is equal, everybody. So whatever this society is aiming for can be achieved only in true Krishna consciousness of understanding that Krishna is the proprietor and enjoyer. So,
correct to say that collecting more than necessary for his maintenance or for his means, his and his family members' maintenance can be considered as thieving.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yes. More than maintenance is considered as thieving. Because can you explain why how? Because a thief is punished, right? How do you think? Because somebody if somebody comes and takes my property, the government will come and punish me, right? So how do you think I will be punished? Because in the material, according to American law, for example, if I accumulate more than necessary, that's not considered as thieving, right? But who will punish and how will one get punishment? Can you elaborate on that?
The punishment is there. It is there. It's going to be coming, but it may not be in this life, because whatever is destined for this life is already destined. That cannot be changed. But the results will be coming in the future lives, according to the actions one performs in this present life. So if one collects more than necessary, that means he is really a thief, and so he gets his punishment afterwards.
Yeah, that's the karma thing, right? It comes back and nobody can escape the results of their karma, because even small things, even the intention is not wrong, then we get the punishment, because that's why strange things happen for which we don't have any explanations. But it is happening because of our previous actions. And it's said in the scriptures that even if there are millions of cows and calves, if you just leave the calf alone, it'll go and find its mother, even though there are like thousands and thousands of calves, because a calf knows who's its mother. Like that, the karmic reactions will be delivered to us at the right time by the supreme law created by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And whatever law this state puts is just, it's not that it's even that can be escaped. But the law that Supreme Personality of Godhead has created, nobody can escape that. And so that's why we should be very careful of our intentions and our accumulations. And this is a very, very nice concept that one should implement in our life.
I was reminded of one verse in Ishopanishad where it says, everything animate and inanimate that is within this material world is controlled and owned by the Lord.
Yes.
Therefore, one should accept only those things that are necessary for him and which are set aside as his quota. One should not accept other things, knowing well to whom they belong.
Yes. Thank you for reminding us. Yes. So another thing is sometimes some people don't know why it's happening. That's why they do it, because the ignorance is covering them. That's why here Prabhupada says that study of Vedas, like Swadhyaya, one should learn, because the knowledge is illumination. What knowledge? First of all, it tells us the don'ts, and then it says the do's. So the don'ts is like, don't thieve, don't do this, don't do that. So if one small, I was just watching a long time back the documentary on what happened when there was an earthquake. Okay, I don't know what that was. When there was an earthquake, and then in 1980, I think, the Bay Bridge was falling into the bay, and then the cars are coming, and then the upper thing has gone inside, and they're showing in the camera that everybody is going and falling. And if only there was one person showing a red flag, just maybe 10 feet before that the crack had happened, we could have saved many lives. You understand? So like this Shastras are saying that you're falling into the deep dark well of birth and death, and that cycle of birth and death. But then it's giving warning. But that is why we have to learn the scriptures to understand what to do and what not to do, because it might seem like people may not believe that it's not necessary that if somebody who's not in a police dress or somebody like who's showing the red flag or whatever it is, but then people may not think that it's ordinary. I want to do it and understand. I want to go and fall into the bay and understand whether the crack has happened or not. One may think like that. But it's a waste, because in that process one could even lose their life. So better we should not always think like the scientists that only when I personally experience and perceive something, I will believe in what the Vedas say. But it's not, because whatever Krishna says in the scriptures is for our benefit. And so we should just read it and not waste too much time on trying to understand what will happen if I don't do it, because that is a demoniac mentality. So once we know all that and understand what is the goal of life, what are we supposed to do, and then it says the do's. Worship the supreme form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the maximum time should be utilized in doing the positive activity, but in the material world what happens is maximum time is used in analyzing why negative activity should not be performed, and what are the things that we can avoid but not doing the negative activity. So many research and so much money is being spent just for understanding more on the negativity and what will happen if it happens, extrapolating it and all that big data and everything. They say, oh, it happened in the past this many times. So everything is material and has no meaning. So that is why here it is said that one should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because then our spiritualism is entirely different, because we concentrate more on the positivity. We wake up early in the morning, we chant, and we worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and then we read scriptures like that. So most time is going in positive activity. So that is why it's very important that we do this Swadhyayan. And then Prabhupada also says that sense control means abstaining from enjoying the senses, because once when somebody tries to enjoy their senses, all the performance of the brain to understand the scriptures is lost. So because the energy goes somewhere else. So this is the first step in becoming a brahmachari, to understand who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yes, Prabhupada.
It's about one of the first verses that you said. How can we understand? So it said that verse said one should perform his prescribed duties to the best of his ability. But how can we understand in this age what are our prescribed duties?
Even in the first thing is in Kali Yuga everybody is a Shudra. That's what Prabhupada says. But still, if we see, even in, as I said, in an organization structure, there are some managers, there are some programmers at the low level who do the physical work like that. Even the engineering and all that, though we consider it as intellectual, it is actually not at the level of like a Brahmana work that we consider, because without intelligence there were mechanical engineers in the Vedic system, right? So, but even that there is some a rundown version of the Varna Ashrama is still there, because some people are into farming, they like farming, they like braiding, you understand? So one can really, suppose if somebody wants me to come and do some business or manage some people, I may not like it. But for some people, their nature itself, they may not want to do programming, you see. So as the children are born, that's what Prabhupada says, one should watch them very closely and see what type of things they develop. So it's not that it's not completely there. It is there, but even the Brahmana class has fallen down. You understand? So that is why Prabhupada says that it's based on actions, and the tendency that one develops, not because of the birth or something, which is like a very convoluted idea of caste system that's there in India. That's completely bogus. It's not there. But if we apply the principles of Varnashrama, we could still categorize people like this, because there are still people who love management and controlling like that. And there are still people who want to do physical work, and there are people who want to do agriculture like that. But in general, as Prabhupada says, it's Shudras.
It is said in the scriptures that in Kali Yuga, most people, almost everyone is a Sudra, and that's why practically seeing also. How can we explain that one should perform his prescribed duties? If we think that, for example, I'm going to some company and working there, and that's the normally the work of a Sudra. Sudra means he works for someone else. He doesn't work for himself. So that is the job of a Sudra, and most people are like that. So how can we understand that one should work to the best of his abilities? Does it mean that I just work like anything for my office?
Just should you work?
No. Does it mean one should work to the best of his abilities? Does it mean that I work very, very hard to satisfy for my company?
Oh yeah, but it goes hand in hand. Means the exact thing of how to understand that, maybe we can ask Vaishika Prabhu. But my understanding is, with my limited understanding, I can explain that is where the Shastras put regulation, right? So, yes, we should do our duties to best of our ability, but not like we concentrate or focus wholly upon that to gain control over what we are doing. But we do as much as possible for whatever nature we have developed, and then we don't accumulate more. That's where it puts the cutting thing, the rule, the ban. You see, this much you can do, and then focus the remaining things on serving Krishna. It's a very difficult thing. That's why Prabhupada says, in the later purports, in one purport, he says that's why one should spend so much time in understanding and serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so that one can cross beyond these designations, because the designations are not clear. Because we ourselves don't know who we are, because sometimes I may be posing myself as a Kshatriya, I may not be. You understand? I may be posing myself as Brahmana, but which I am not, because I may Shudra. So that is why Prabhupada says that one should do devotional service and try to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead and act according to that, so that we cross beyond these material designations. And at that time, there is no designation like that. But when we are in this world, it's very difficult to really lay out what is my nature, to how much I'll work. That is where Sadhu Shastra and Guru Sadhu Shastra come into picture. That's how we really understand in our lives what one's ability means and what our designation means, if that understanding. So that is a practical application of how we understand ourselves. So let's move on to the next verse. He says, one must observe silence, acquire steadiness by practicing yogic postures, control the breathing of the vital air, withdraw the senses from the sense object, and thus concentrate the mind on the heart. So, doesn't sound like it, right? Doesn't sound like so easy to concentrate the mind on the heart. You understand? But here Prabhupada says that one should be silent. What does Prabhupada say as silent? Silent in our Krishna consciousness is like you don't speak anything that's not related to Krishna. And then steadiness in practice. But all these yogic postures and everything is only one thing, is to control the mind. And because the mind is also affected by how the passage of air within the heart. So by doing this pranayama and all that, there is only one purpose. That's control the mind and focus it on the Supreme. But in later verses, Prabhupada will explain how in our Krishna consciousness movement we do all these things very practically, and it's inclusive of the principles that's being explained here. So let's go to the next verse. Fixing the vital air and the mind in one of the 6 circles of vital air circulation within the body, thus concentrating one's mind on the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is called samadhi or samadhana of the mind. So in the purport, Prabhupada explains that there are 6 circles. You might have seen the yogi sitting with 6 circles in their body. Usually the people who like advertise for yoga, they put that picture. So the first circle is in the belly, is within the belly. The second circle is in the heart, if we can visualize that. The third circle is in the area of lungs. The fourth circle is on the palate. The fifth is between the eyebrows. And the highest and the 6th circle is above the mind. So they call this Kundalini yoga and all that, like how they raise the energy from one circle to the next circle. But what is the purpose of that? Here it is clearly says that Vaikuntha Leela. Vaikuntha Leela means one should meditate on the pastimes of the Lord. But does any of the yoga processes, like whatever millions of yogas that we have today, does anybody say that by your breathing exercises and by your focusing on those vital airs and moving your energy upwards, they just say that you concentrate on void. But here it says that Vaikuntha Leela means Vaikuntha. First of all, Vaikuntha itself means a lot, and then it says Leela means pastimes. The person who lives there and does pastimes. So that is a thing that we should focus on. So this one verse can help us understand what is really real yoga and what is bogus. So we should not be fooled when people say that by yoga you can raise your thing high and you can become so high that you can produce some ash or some kumkum or some turmeric. It does happen, because I went to some person's home and they had a big picture, and I said, "How come you worship him?" And they said, "Oh, that kumkum, so much kumkum falls on the picture on some day at certain time." And then the devotees ask, if that is what you consider as it's not, it could be true, because so many people like anima, lagima, from sitting here through the rays, they can enter into another planet, take something and come back, like that. So it's not that it's not possible, it could be possible, but what do we speak of that person who has created mountains of ashes? You see? He is a supreme yogi, right? So why not go for a person who can make maybe a handful of kumkum? Why should we worship him while there is a person who can make ash like the Mount Himalayas, right? Like Everest. He has that much amount of sand or whatever he has produced. So we should not be foolish like that. So here it says that samadhi, Prabhupada says that the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is called samadhi, means focusing the mind on the pastimes of the Lord is called samadhi. So what is the practical way in which we focus on the pastimes of the Lord? It's by chanting and hearing, because Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu. So it's not. It's in our Krishna consciousness movement, Prabhupada has made it very easy. So just by, now iPods are there, so many electronic equipments are there, and the people who invent are also getting purified, because they are helping others to perform devotional service, and they are helping us to think of Krishna 24 hours a day. So Prabhupada says that is samadhi. And we see so many people have done that also, like Ambarish Maharaj, Dhruv Maharaj, Prahalad Maharaj, like that. So that's how samadhi is explained. in its true sense. Let's go to the next verse. By these processes or any other true processes, one must control the contaminated, unbridled mind, which is always attracted by material enjoyment, and thus fix himself in thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, so far in the verses, Kapila was explaining some of the principles that one should practice, and he established the first premise saying that it should not be performed for any material desires. And then he says, and one of the prime methods he was saying is, but the mind has to be concentrated on the vital circulation of the air, and then one should think of the Vaikuntha pastimes of the Lord. The main point that why all these things has to be is being said is that because the mind is contaminated, it's very difficult to control that. Because if we Radhanath Swami gives this example in his lecture that we have this air base in Florida, right? Like U.S. Air Force base in Florida, but they are very powerful. The entire world is like so much afraid of their military power. But then when the hurricane comes, they just give only one announcement: vacate and escape, because they cannot control the power of the wind, a simple wind, right? On earth, the US military power is the best that one can get, and with all their power, they cannot control this wind, and they say that you just go to a safe place. But then in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna says that controlling my mind is more difficult to control the raging wind. So Arjuna says, with all the power of the US military, US Air Force or whatever it is, we cannot control this wind. But Arjuna says there is a possibility of even controlling that raging wind, but controlling my mind is more difficult than that. So, but who can control it? That's why our acharyas say that you don't try to control the mind, but you hear and chant the glories of Ajita, the unconquerable. So by that, he controls our mind then. Then we give all the responsibility to Krishna. So if we see in Vrindavan, Hanumat Prechik Maharaj was giving this example that any problem comes in our life, we just try to stand before it and plan so many things to avoid, like all insurance, as Vaisheshika Prabhu sent that email, the list of insurance that we have, all is done to avoid the danger. But in the material world. But in Vrindavan, every day there is danger because there is some demon comes and everybody is bewildered. But they don't take any of the things to fight against the demon. They just call out for Krishna. So that is Vrindavan. So Maharaj was saying that that's how controlling the mind is not so very easy task that we could do by ourselves. That is why by hearing and by constant chanting of the holy names and the pastimes of Krishna, then the mind will be controlled and the mind will automatically think of the pastimes of the Lord, and that is called samadhi. Technically, if we see, it's a different way, but according to Kapila's instruction, what is samadhi? Focus on Vaikuntha Leela. So even though one may be working in a software company or one may be doing some whatever activity in the material world, but because his mind is always thinking on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Prabhupada says that is samadhi. So let's go to the next verse. After controlling one's mind and sitting postures, one should spread a seat in a secluded and sanctified place, sit there in an easy posture, keeping the body erect and practicing breath control. Okay. This is a very important topic. Now let's see. You remember, I'm not sure if you remember, Vaisheshika Prabhu talks about the habitat, how we should create an environment where devotees, people can come and feel at home and take to Krishna consciousness. But let's see, and we propagate ourselves as saying that we are propagating bhakti yoga, right? So yoga, here Prabhupada said the seed should consist of deer skin and kusha grass and topped with cotton on the top. And that's how a yogi should sit. And also in other sampradayas, before they give initiation, because the posture has to be that the souls have to be under the, here as Prabhupada explains here in the chant, let's read that again. The Swasti Samasinaha, it is recommended in yoga scripture that one should put the soles of the feet between the two thighs and ankles and sit straight. That posture will help one to concentrate his mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Why? Because that posture in which we sit, the moment the legs are cross-legged and then we sit straight, first of all the circulation of the air is controlled, and then so many nerves, millions of nerves that are under the waist get controlled. So there is a scientific explanation for that. And then they also see that before giving initiation, they just see how hard that soul has become, like how callous and thick it is. That means that much time you have spent in swadhyaya, in hearing from your spiritual master, in reciting the Vedas. So they physically see your souls and find out like how much time of how many years you have spent in hearing from your spiritual master, because those days they just sit on the floor. And then they consider whether you're fit for initiation or not. So how many of us do you think will pass that test? You see, it's not possible. It's not that very easy, but Prabhupada made it easy. Let's go to the next verse, verse number 9. The yogi should clear the passage of vital air by breathing in the following manner. First, very technical, he should inhale very deeply, then hold the breath in, and finally exhale. Or, first of all, that itself is very difficult. Reversing the process, the yogi can first exhale, then hold the breath outside, and finally inhale. This is done so that the mind may become steady and free from external influences. And this in the purport, Prabhupada says that 3 different activities are recommended for clearing the passage of breath: Puraka, Kumbhaka, and Rechaka. Inhaling the breath is called Puraka, sustaining it within is called Kumbhaka, and finally exhaling it is called Rechaka. This recommended process can also be performed in the reverse order. After exhaling, one can keep the air outside for some time and then inhale. The nerves through which the inhalation and exhalation are conducted are technically called Ida and Pingala. The ultimate purpose of clearing the Ida and Pingala passage is to divert the mind from material enjoyment. Yes.
So it's not that Prabhupada is really encouraging the people of this age to do this kind of yoga,
Yes,
correct?
and
right?
he will
He's not
explain it,
recommending
yes.
Okay.
Yes. That's why, but we should know all these things just to appreciate how Prabhupada made it so easy. Because unless, that's the purpose of knowledge, because unless we understand how difficult, rare and valuable a product is, that's all marketing, right? Sometimes one strategy is to explain how other product it's it's not very easy, how it's very difficult, and how they have made their it's not a product, but I'm just saying that it really helps our mind to be convinced and be appreciative of what we do. And why all these technical explanations of air passage? Because that was the way in the previous age, where you clean how your air circulation happens within your body, because when that is controlled, then the mind is controlled. That is the focus. And then when the mind is controlled, what does it mean to control the mind? It means focusing on Vaikuntha Leela, that we saw in the previous verse. That is the goal of controlling the mind. But then what is the process that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu suggested for focusing on the mind? And we also said that Kirtaniya Sadahari, because he says that because if you glorify and hear the pastimes of the Lord at every moment, something falls in your ears all the time, then then you are achieving the ultimate goal of focusing the mind not on material enjoyment but on the supreme Vaikuntha Leela pastimes, and you attain samadhi. So why take that wrong route which doesn't suit for this age? So that is what is Prabhupada is alluding to in his purports. That's why it's very difficult if these purports are not there, because we will try to go to some Hatha Yoga after reading this. We'll go to some Hatha Yoga class and we'll try to control. That is why Prabhupada says Prabhupada's books are important. Because if we just take any scripture and read it in the Vedas, because it's almost like a big supermarket. You want to buy only 2 items, but you go there, like some big Costco or like some big mall. There's so many things allure you, and we end up buying so many unwanted things that we don't want. So like that is the only reason why we should be focused only on Supreme Lord Vishnu. We should not go to any Paradevata, like any other demigod. And we should not resort to any other scripture which is not illumined by our acharyas. So because then we tend to take it ourselves that, oh, maybe if I do this austerity, I'll get that, like that. So that is why these purports are very important. And then let's go to the next verse. The yogis who practice such breathing exercises are very soon freed from all mental disturbances, just as gold, when put into fire, fanned with air, becomes free from all impurities. Now, that is the goal of whatever he explained so far in the first 10 verses. Let's read the translation of the second verse also, and then we'll understand how we are doing it in this Kali Yuga. Verse 11, by practicing the process of pranayama, one can eradicate the contamination of his physiological condition, and by concentrating the mind, one can become free from all sinful activities. By restraining the senses, one can free himself from material association, and by meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can become free from 3 modes of material nature. So, what is the essence of controlling this mind? Purification. Because the mind has been contaminated with so many impurities. So, suppose we just enter into the house maybe after like 6 months of vacation or something like that, or enter into a house which hasn't been maintained, and there is a big mirror wall, and you just go and stand in front of the wall. Do you see your picture? No, right? Because there are lots of dust. So that needs to be cleaned. That's what the mind is, where we visualize ourselves. So we read that verse of inhaling, exhaling, reversing, sitting posture, pranayama, and so many things. The ultimate goal, and eating half the stomach, 1/4 of the stomach, like that. So many rules and regulations for what? To remove the contaminations in the mind. That's it. But what does Mahaprabhu suggest for that? The easy process. Kirtaniya Sadahari. Yes, that's the verse. And then he says, technically he says that the mind is cleansed. First verse of Shikshashtakam, right? Te cheto darpana marjanam. Because the ultimate purpose of what Lord Kapila is saying is to purify the contaminated mind. And that happens, it means all this fire of material, the desire to enjoy this material senses is burning, and bhavamaha davagni nirvapanam, right? And everything is eradicated. Param vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam, right? And it is true. Like how all these things, some people will tend to do it because I can physically explain it. And I can even sometimes do some medical tests and prove how this air passage is sometimes like helping us in purifying our physiological conditions. But then, as we explained there, our approach is to depend on Krishna, because let Krishna's name work, and that purifies all our, because it's such a Himalayan task and a humongous task, and just to even think of removing the contaminations by ourselves is unfathomable, and the mind cannot take it. So, but rather than focusing on the negative side of what will happen if I don't focus, what will happen if I don't do this, and how each and every contamination is affecting me now, which is what the science is doing. Rather, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, focus on the positivity, where you concentrate more on the positive thing of approaching Krishna, hearing more about Krishna. So when that happens at every moment in our lives, then the contaminations will be removed very easily, and one need not take this path, right? Because one can go to Los Angeles by Padayatra if one wants to, but one can also take a flight and go there in 30 minutes, right? So it's not that this process, or it was not there, or it's new, or whatever it is, it's just the most easiest way to do it in this age. But that doesn't mean that it's not potential. It doesn't have the potency. In fact, that is the topmost efficient process that one can practice, to always chant the names of God and to hear His pastimes. Because later on Prabhupada says that why hearing gives the same benefit just by hearing. You just play it and then you hear it, and then all these things happen. But suppose if you say you have to do all these things, you have to leave your work, you have to go to a forest and do all these things. But being in Silicon Valley, doing your work, prescribed duty that you have to do, but just by hearing, you also achieve the topmost benefit. So we have to make that a priority, that we play something at our home or office, and all the modern inventions, we should make best use of that to always hear about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Let's go to the next one, which again makes it more complex. When the mind is perfectly purified by this practice of yoga, one should concentrate on the tip of the nose. One should concentrate on the tip of the nose with half-closed eyes and see the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So what happens to me is like if I turn off, Vaisheshika Prabhu says that turn off all the things that have on and off switch. So if you turn off, there is no noise, and you just go like in your backyard or something, you just sit and try to chant. Half a round I chant, and then I'm fully asleep in samadhi. Like that's what will happen, isn't it? What to speak of being conscious? Because when the mind becomes calm, because we are so much agitated throughout the day, the moment the mind becomes calm, what does it want to do? It wants to sleep. It wants to rest. It is a good symptom in one sense, because so many people cannot sleep and they spend so much money to get that sleep. But you just chant half a round and you get sleep. So it just proves that the chanting calms the mind, right? But our acharyas say that sleeping is also due to our offenses, because it also stops us from spending the time on the positive activity of practicing devotional service. So, but the thing is it easy or difficult, the process that he's mentioned here? Obviously it's difficult. First of all, getting experience in this technique is very difficult. But let's just see, let's go forward and see how it's easy to do this practice. Okay, we were in which verse? Sorry, I lost the verse. 12th, okay. Okay, yeah, 13th, we have to read 13th. Okay, that's, let's read the next set of like 5-6 verses together and then we can discuss. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has a cheerful lotus-like countenance with ruddy eyes like the interior of a lotus and a swarthy body like the petals of a blue lotus. He bears a conch, discus and mace in 3 of his hands. So first Kapila explained like what is the purpose, and one should perform the religious activities not for sense gratification but to realize the absolute truth. And he said all the principles of truthfulness, non-violence, controlling the senses, performing the breathing exercises. And why do we do all that? Pranayama, to control the mind. And then he says once we control the mind, he comes to a point where we should focus the mind, concentrate the mind, meditate. After all these things, only meditation happens. So now he's saying you meditate. On whom do you meditate? That's what he's explaining. You meditate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. And how is that Vishnu? The Supreme Personality of Godhead has a cheerful lotus-like countenance. But we can imagine, because as children, right, we think of so many things. So like that, when we hear about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we can think. Like when I say India, you think of something in India, right? Maybe some temple or your mom or something like that. So when we read, the Supreme Personality of Godhead has a cheerful lotus-like countenance. We can imagine like that in our mind. It purifies the mind. So let's try to do that, at least for the next few verses. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has a cheerful lotus-like countenance with ruddy eyes like the interior of a lotus and a swarthy body like the petals of blue lotus. He bears a conch, discus and mace in 3 of his lotus hands. So what is the color of the God? Blue. Blue color, right? Because it says that swarthy body like the petals of a blue lotus. His body is blue. This is in Krishna's you may see in Krishna's pictures also the body is blue, right? So, in fact, it is also said in Bhagavatam, right? There is 3/4 of this entire creation is spiritual world, and 1/4 is the material world. Like in this America, for example, if you explain, there is most of the land is for people who are free, right? There may be only 1/10 of the land or 1.1 of the land there is something called prison. Understand? Because some people who don't follow the rules, the law that is ordained by the government, they are put into the prison house. But people in prison might think that is all as America. It's their problem, isn't it? Like that, in this entire creation, 3/4 is for people who are liberated. There lies Vaikunta, Goloka, where all the people who are liberated, they live and they enjoy, they serve Krishna. But there is a small cloud-like space where people like us who are still want to enjoy the material world, we are in this prison house. You understand? So you can think of this as a black hole, right? And there are 2 openings in that. The sun and the moon. Because outside, it's full of light. Because the spiritual world, the 3/4 is full of light. Brahma Jyoti. Where does it come from? It comes from the body of Krishna. The light comes from the body of Krishna. So in this, if there is no sun and there is no moon, this material world is fully dark. Okay? So that is why when we see the sun, the sky, through which the light comes, it's blue. And one can see that, and it's a fact that everything, the light in this material world comes from Krishna. It's Krishna's bodily effulgence. So it has that. So one can, it's common sense to understand that God exists and He maintains everything. And we are here to learn our lessons and break and cross beyond the coverings and go to the free land and do free service. So, and do like this and serve, meditate on Krishna. Let's go to the second verse. So Krishna's body is blue. And also, he has conch, discus, mace in 3 hands, right? And he has a lotus in another hand. Based on the position of these 4 items, like there are 12 forms of Vishnu in the spiritual world. Those technicalities are explained in the teachings of Chaitanya. So, but let's just move on to the next verse. His loins are covered by a shining cloth, yellowish like the filaments of a lotus. On his breast he bears the mark of Shrivatsa, a curl of white hair. The brilliant Kaustuba gem is suspended from his neck. Now think of this. His loins are covered by a shining cloth, yellowish like filaments of lotus. His breast bears the mark of Shrivatsa, a curl of white hair. And the brilliant Kaustuba gem is suspended from his neck. So you can think of the Lord in Tirumala, like he looks like that. He has Kaustuba, he has Lakshmi on his thing. So we can think of the form of the Lord. Just by thinking, we get purified. And innumerable sins are gone just by reading these form of the Lord and really focusing on each form. The next verse, he also wears around his neck a garland of attractive sylvan flowers. Have you seen sylvan flowers? I don't know. And a swarm of bees, intoxicated by its delicious fragrance, hums about the garland. He is further superbly adorned with a pearl necklace, a crown, and pairs of armlets, bracelets, and anklets in the leg. So, if you see here, when there is, in this material world, when there is a flower, it's attached to means it's not plucked. All the bees go there. But have you seen anybody wearing a flower and bees going around? Once it's plucked, there is no life in the flower, right? It starts deteriorating. So, but how does it happen in Vaikuntha? Because everything is spiritual. There is no deterioration. There is no time. Because in the moment we are born here, every moment we are dying. Everything goes towards destruction in this material world because there is something called time which destroys everything. So, but in spiritual world there is no concept of time, and everything is life. Everything is soul. It's full of its vitality. So now, even though the flowers are picked from the plant, they are still fresh and they never go bad. So, and though these bees, because the living entities can sense that, the real stuff and the fake stuff and the fading stuff. So they go and hum on the garland of the Lord. So, means I'm just saying that even the Kaustuba gem and all that Krishna is wearing, it's not something of this world. But by thinking of them, our mind gets purified. His loins and hips encircled by a girdle, he stands on the lotus of his devotee's heart. He is most charming to look at, and his serene aspect gladdens the eyes and souls of the devotees who behold him. Go to the next verse, 17th. The Lord is eternally very beautiful, and he is worshipable by all the inhabitants of every planet. He is ever youthful and always eager to bestow his blessings upon his devotees. The glory of the Lord is always worth singing, for his glories enhance the glories of his devotees. One should therefore meditate upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead and upon his devotees. One should meditate the eternal form of the Lord until the mind becomes fixed. Thus, always merged in devotional service, the yogi visualizes the Lord standing, moving, lying down, sitting within him, for the pastimes of the Supreme Lord are always beautiful and attractive. In fixing his mind on the eternal form of the Lord, the yogi should take a collective view of all his limbs, but should fix the mind on each individual limb of the Lord. So, means I'm going to stop here. There are a little more verses. One more verse we'll read. The devotee should first concentrate his mind on the lotus feet, which are adorned with the marks of thunderbolt, a gourd, a banner, and a lotus. The splendor of their beautiful ruby nails resembles the orb of the moon and dispels the thick gloom of one's heart. So, what is the thick gloom? Is the ignorance that is there in our heart. Today, when you go home, you can search for the symbols on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. You Google out and images come. If you see in the left foot and the right foot of Krishna, and then you see all that it's mentioned here, you will see the elephant gourd, the banner, and the lotus. Every symbol on Krishna's feet has a meaning, and you can also read about that. But a yogi can focus on these symbols. Like, for example, it is said that one who focuses on the thunderbolt on the Lord Krishna's lotus feet, then all his ignorance will be gone. Like that. So there is a benediction for concentrating on the symbols on the lotus feet of Krishna. But as we saw today, the form of the Lord is so beautiful. And because we don't, and where is he living? As you said as we read in the previous verse, he is there in our hearts. And he is there right now in our hearts. But we don't know where it is, because if our fathers or great grandfathers had put some lots of gold coins in our backyard under a tree or something, and nobody tells us, we don't know, right? It's like, for example, in some temple also they found like so much gold, but they didn't know it so many years now. Like that, there is also one deer, right? Musk deer. It always runs and runs and runs because it's searching for some smell that's coming, and it wants to find out where the smell is coming from. It doesn't know that the smell is coming from its own navel, right? Like that, Krishna is there within our hearts, but we don't realize that. Like, all the form like this is there. He's there as Paramatma within our heart. We don't realize that. So that is why we have to have, he appears in a form like this in front of us. Like, now you see Krishna and he's dressed, and one may think that he's just a stone or a statue, but he's not. Because we can go out and stand in front of a statue and meditate on a statue for hours. Nothing will happen in our life. You understand? But when we come and stand in front of Krishna's deity, and we see from the lotus feet, and we digest, we slowly see each form from his lotus feet, what he's wearing, what bangles he's wearing, what is he wearing on his waist. You see, our intelligence, the previous samskaras that we created, because why we suffer in this material world is because we do something wrong, or whatever we do, it gives some happiness, and it creates impressions in our brains, in our consciousness. So what we do is, that's why we want to do the same sinful activity again, because there is an impression that it will give us happiness. So how do we go and clear those impressions that are created? Just by watching and focusing on every part of Krishna's body, all those impressions will be gone. For example, it is said that if one is too much haunted by lust, and they cannot control, like Cupid is attacking, they don't know what to do. And it is said that if one focuses on the eyebrows of the Lord, You see, all the lust will be gone from our hearts. So like that, whenever we come to temple or whenever we read the scriptures, we should make an extra effort to understand, and when we see Krishna, we should really see him, not just like come with a list of prayers and we don't even have the time to say the prayers. You see? But do you see, suppose if we all have children, right? Our children don't come to us, Daddy, my name is this, I have this desires, can you please fulfill me? You have to pay my school fees, you have to give me this food today. The child doesn't tell. If the child comes in front of the parent and that's what the child has to do every day morning, then it's not a very healthy life for the child, isn't it? But why do we do that to Krishna? Because when we go in front of Krishna, we go with the list. Like we say that, this problem has to be solved, I am in this problem, like that. But Krishna is our mother, Krishna is our father, and he is with us at every moment. Because we have not developed that close relationship, and we don't have that much confidence in Krishna that Krishna will protect us. Krishna says that I preserve what you have and I carry what you lack. Our parents cannot carry what we lack. We have to suffer if we don't have any skill. But Krishna says, I carry what you lack. He is even giving that confidence. So instead of like going with a list of things that we want, rather we should go to Krishna and ask him that, let me develop more relationship with you. Let me surrender to you. Then you will take care of everything that I need. And he will give us higher intelligence. So with that understanding, we'll stop here and we'll start Guru Puja. I'm really sorry that I went over 7 minutes. Thank you all very much for coming. Hare Krishna.